The Thyxar had observed countless worlds throughout their millennia of existence. Their empires stretched across galaxies, built on their unmatched strength and advanced technologies. They had conquered many worlds without effort, swiftly dismissing the inhabitants of each as weak, primitive, and easily subdued. To the Thyxar, conquest was routine, their superiority undeniable. Earth, however, was different. From orbit, Earth seemed insignificant. A small, blue planet, teeming with a species that appeared frail, emotional, and chaotic. The Thyxar Council scanned the broadcasts of Earth. News reports filled with conflict, environmental destruction, and petty human squabbles. Their scientists and strategists studied human history, a chaotic narrative marked by wars, famines, and a fractured society. The primitive nature of humanity seemed clear. Their weapons were rudimentary, their cities were vulnerable, and their biology was fragile compared to the Thyxar's nearly indestructible forms. Percal, the supreme strategist of the Thyxar, dismissed any notion that humans might pose a threat. Their technology is primitive, he said, their minds are clouded with emotion, and their bodies are frail. They've been locked in conflict for millennia, yet have failed to unify. He pointed to humanity's history of wars and destruction. Their planet, polluted and unstable, seemed incapable of long-term survival. If their own environment couldn't sustain them, what chance did they have against an invincible force? The Council agreed unanimously. Earth would be an easy conquest. The Thyxar would terraform the planet for their own use and strip its resources without resistance. The decision was made. An invasion was inevitable, the timing simply a matter of convenience. But before launching the invasion, protocol dictated that the Thyxar conducted detailed scan of Earth's atmosphere. This would allow them to determine if any unseen hazards existed, such as pollutants or harmful radiation. It was a routine procedure, one that had never raised any concerns on the countless other planets the Thyxar had encountered. Yet, even this seemingly trivial task would shift the balance of their decision. Vaeli, a junior scientist assigned to the atmospheric scan, quietly observed the data as it flowed across her display. As she analyzed the Earth's atmosphere, she saw the usual traces of pollution, carbon dioxide, and greenhouse gases. Yet something didn't sit right. There were inconsistencies, patterns in the atmosphere that shouldn't have existed in a primitive world. Vaeli narrowed her focus, drilling deeper into the data. She noticed traces of unusual compounds, chemical signatures that didn't match natural atmospheric processes. Human activity was clearly shaping the environment in unnatural ways. But it wasn't just the pollutants that stood out. There was something more disturbing: residues from nuclear detonations and radiation, evidence of humanity's dangerous experiments with weapons of mass destruction. It was unexpected. How could such a frail species harness such power? Vaeli reviewed the data again. This wasn't just reckless industrialization. This was an intentional manipulation of their own atmosphere, a dangerous game of survival. She had always believed that humans were fragile, but now she realized they were far more complicated. They weren't just struggling to survive. They were actively reshaping their world, even if it meant their own destruction. They had turned their planet into a weapon, and the thought both intrigued and unnerved her. The rest of the Thyxar Council would not understand. Percal had already made his decision, dismissing the Earthlings as weak. No one cared about the minor details. It was always the same story with every world they surveyed: advanced technologies, weak species, and inevitable conquest. Vaeli considered the data one final time. If only the Council could understand. If only they could see that humanity's strength didn't lie in their technology alone, but in their unyielding will to survive. With a deep breath, Vaeli prepared to present her findings. She knew that challenging the Council's decision would be risky, but she also knew that ignoring the data would be a grave mistake. There was something about humans, something hidden beneath the chaos, beneath the wars and pollution, that could not be ignored. They might be weak in many ways, but Vaeli sensed that their resilience was far greater than anything the Thyxar had encountered before. Would the Council see this, or would they dismiss her once more? She had to try. The fate of Earth depended on it. The Thyxar Council was not impressed. When Vaeli presented her findings, they received her analysis with skepticism, dismissing it as the misguided opinion of a junior scientist. Recall, the supreme strategist, was particularly dismissive. "What does it matter?" he scoffed. "They've polluted their own planet, they've waged endless wars, and they continue to destroy themselves. Their technology is primitive, their biology frail. What do we have to fear from such a species?" But Vaeli stood firm. "It's not just their technology, supreme strategist. It's their ability to adapt, to survive in the face of everything that should have wiped them out. If we ignore this, we risk underestimating them in ways that could lead to our downfall." She pressed on, detailing the history of human survival, their capacity to endure plagues, famine, and natural disasters. Despite all odds, humanity had survived. Vaeli shared stories of their greatest triumphs, overcoming the ice ages, conquering deadly diseases, and building civilizations from nothing. They had gone from primitive hunters to a spacefaring species in the span of a few centuries. To Vaeli, this was not weakness, it was proof of humanity's incredible will to survive. She pointed to humanity's resilience in the face of their own flaws, how they continued to push forward even as they created weapons capable of mass destruction. They have learned to harness the very forces that could destroy them. They've managed to push their own biology to the limits, adapting in ways that should have been impossible for a species so frail. Their ability to innovate, to create, and to endure is not something we should take lightly, but the Council remained unconvinced. They had seen this before, species that seemed to possess resilience, only to crumble when faced with true power. "They fight amongst themselves," Recall argued. "Their own leaders can't even unite their people. They've always been divided, always fractured. It's this weakness that will make them easy to conquer." Vaeli countered. "That's precisely what makes them dangerous. Their division forces them to find new ways to survive, to adapt. They don't need unity to be powerful. They can thrive even in chaos." She then highlighted humanity's ability to cooperate in times of crisis. During moments of existential threat, such as wars and pandemics, humans were capable of extraordinary unity, setting aside their differences for the greater good. It was in these moments that their true strength emerged. "Look at their world wars," she said. "Despite everything that divided them, they came together to defeat common threats. They found ways to cooperate, to overcome adversity in ways we've never seen before." Still, Recall remained unmoved. "This is not the strength of a superior species," he said coldly. "This is the desperation of a primitive race." Vaeli's patience was running thin, but she knew she had to push further. She expanded on her analysis of the Earth's atmosphere, pointing out how the planet had been transformed by human activity. They have altered their very environment, shaped it in ways that we would never have considered. If their atmosphere can hold after everything they've done to it, what does that say about their resilience? Finally, a breakthrough came. As Vaeli continued to outline the human potential she saw, the Council's tone shifted. The more they considered the data, the more they realized that humanity's true strength wasn't in their physical prowess or technological dominance, but in their unyielding will to survive. They had a remarkable capacity to adapt to change, to overcome their flaws, and to innovate when faced with destruction. In the silence that followed, Vaeli allowed herself a moment of hope. Perhaps they had underestimated humanity, not because they were weak, but because they were so much stronger than anyone had realized. There was a power within humanity that even the Thyxar couldn't predict. The Council's silence was broken by Recall, who, for the first time, seemed uncertain. "You believe they can unite in the face of an external threat?" he asked, his voice tinged with a rare hesitation. "Yes," Vaeli replied simply. "If we push them to the brink, they will. And they will fight with everything they have." A heavy pause followed. The Council was now deep in thought, reevaluating their earlier conclusions. Perhaps humanity was not as weak as they had believed. Perhaps they were far more dangerous than they had ever imagined.